been about a month since I've been over and even so much as cast eyes on the 650 Triumph, and that has been because one, I've been opening presents and eating mince pies, and two, I've been filming my short film. So thank you guys for holding in there, and thank you for watching the short film and taking the time to comment as well. I hope you've all got some good motorbike bits for Christmas, because I did. I got a couple of bits for the engine for this, some Hagen shocks for the 500 Triumph, which is going to be a godsend, and something else I would like to fit on here today. But we've got some other jobs before we get around to that. So really, I kind of feel that this bike is at the stage now where every little piece we add is contributing massively to it looking more like a complete motorcycle. And I know that sounds really, really silly, but there is a stage where you seem to add stuff and it doesn't really do a lot for getting you any closer to being a bike. But I think we're getting there now. So I would like to take a look at the front mudguard first, and then hopefully later on we can have a go at attaching a light as well. Right, well, we need a front mudguard, but there is a problem, because when I was looking through my folder of inspirational motorcycle photos, I quickly realised that none of the Triumphs I like the look of had a front mudguard, and that is a problem, because I don't know if you've ever ridden in the rain with no front mudguard, but it's like someone is firing a water pistol directly in between your eyes, and I can't hack that. It will slowly turn me insane, like some form of Chinese water torture. So I needed to come up with something that I was going to be happy with, which is quite a difficult thing. There are loads and loads of options, but what really inspires me is racing for the people. And what I mean by that is like everyday Joes who had a go at racing. And quite often in the States that was stuff like the desert racing and the hill climbing. So I kind of want something with a little bit of a homemade feel. So after some plotting and planning, I've come up with this, which may look a bit of a peculiar thing, but that's okay. Now I will hold my hand up now and say this is not the finest thing I've ever made, but it is going to work and it looks the way I want it to. So I've actually used some metal strap to create this, taking some inspiration from the flat style mudguards like what I've got on my 500 Triumph. The actual aluminium guard, that came from an auto jumble, that literally was £2. So whilst it looks a little bit rugged and a little bit homemade, I'm a fan of that. So a couple of things to note when fitting mudguards. One, it's really handy to have a big bit of rubber tube that you can run round the tyre, and that way you can get a constant gap between the mudguard and your tyre all the way down. Now I've already done that in order to make this brace, so I don't need to worry about that. The second thing is, remember when we were talking about the fuel tank and we were talking about how we were putting the bolts in but making sure they were cut down to the right length, otherwise it could puncture a hole in the tank? Well, the same goes for these forks. You can actually wind it in too far and then squish the sliders at the bottom. You'll get a sticky fork, or worse, a fork that won't go up and down at all. So we've taken care of those bolts, I've got them ready to go. The only thing left to do now is to fit it. So the front mudguard is now mounted. Obviously this only mounts from one position, one bolting point, which is in between the forks. Now that is okay, people do that a lot on trials bikes and stuff like that, but also it's not just a case of it being held in place by the bolt, it actually has, how can I describe this? Almost like a step that fits into a groove. So I've made the groove, and that means that it basically can't pivot backwards and forwards. It locks into that place and then the bolts do it up. So I think it should be just fine. Also the mudguard is shorter than original one and it's aluminium, so it's a little bit lighter. we shouldn't run into any troubles there. Now the second thing is, obviously it doesn't look like there's a huge gap in between there, but there is, because I put that rubber tube there, and we should be good there. We shouldn't get any stones caught up in there or anything like that. And I think it does achieve the kind of hill climbing, desert racery look that I wanted. So let's move on from that and start having a look at a headlamp. I pulled out quite a selection of different headlights. I've been playing around with what I might like to do on here. Now usually I would put a 4.5 inch base on there because it's nice and small. It's got that States look about it. And really, this is a similar situation to the front mudguard. Do I really want a headlight? No. But do I need one? Yes. So I reached for my 4.5 inch base. It didn't look right. It looked lost. So I've actually got a 5 3/4 inch base now. I've got the choice of either side mount or bottom mount. I think I'm going to go with the bottom mount. That looks best to me. This is the headlight in question, with a bit of duct tape across the front because I've been taping it on there to see how it looks. Now these have got a little mount down the bottom that you usually can just drill a hole and bolt it. We can't do that on here without at least making a bracket, but I think I've got a different idea because I am quite fussy about how I like my headlights mounted. I like them to be as far back into the yokes as possible so that they're unobtrusive and it looks a little bit more aggressive. So yeah, I have a loose idea of what I want to make, but I'm not really sure how it's going to turn out. So we'll just give it a go. I'm going to get some scrap metal, start cutting bits, start drilling holes, and let's just get something going. So I've just finished up on the headlight bracket, and I headed into that with sort of a vague idea of what I wanted, but it all fell into place quite quickly and I'm quite happy with what I made. It's probably overly complicated for what we're doing, but I like the way it looks, and it's going to work well, I think. So yeah, that's great news. Now I could have just migged that up and saved myself a load of time, but I actually chose to TIG braze it, only because I'm trying to improve my TIG brazing. And it's not the best, but I'm pretty pleased with how this has come out as an object. Now there's no real advantage to TIG brazing that, apart from you could say braze does absorb vibration a little bit better because it provides a bit of flex. And if you've ever seen the front wheel on a Triumph when it's sat at tick over, you'll notice it going backwards and forwards like that. They do vibrate a lot, so it is kind of important to have quite a strong brace for that base headlight. They are quite weighty and it's mounted in one position via one bolt. So yeah, I think it's going to work well, but before we fit it, we need to give it a lick of paint. So let's get out our spray paint and we'll just give it a quick once over with some red primer and then some black. Right, so whilst that headlight bracket is drying, we need to be doing something because time is precious. So for Christmas, someone kindly gave me some of these. Now, you may recognise them because they are shrouds. Shrouds for my rear shock. Why are they important? Well, in the UK, if the council decides to salt the roads when we get a little bit of ice, a little bit of snow, it will get stuck to your bike and it will rust stuff very, very quickly. Now, stanchions cannot be rusty because they will tear apart the oil seals and stuff like that. So if we can protect those with these, we'll be winning. Not only that, but I've kind of always wanted a shrouded pair of shocks. I've never had any, so I think we should see if we can get them on. Let's unbolt the shocks. We should be able to compress the spring by hand, pop these bad boys on and get it fitted again. Well, I have to admit, getting those off by hand was a little bit harder than I remember. I wouldn't really recommend anyone does that. You should use a spring tool if you've got one that fits, or even you can use some small ratchet straps. I didn't have either of those, and I wanted to get on with it, so I compressed the spring by hand and got them off. That being said, if you're careful, it's up to you, isn't it? They're not under a huge amount of spring pressure. If this was something like a car shock absorber, I would never dream of doing anything like that. But anyway, we've got the shrouds fitted and they have really, really smartened up those shocks. I'm very pleased with that indeed. And now the paint on the headlight bracket is dry. So let's get that on there, get the headlight on there. I'm excited for this, man. So that's our headlight and overly complicated bracket fitted, and I have to say it looks pretty well on there. Another quite nice thing that I like about having a bottom mount headlight is the fact that you don't have to remove the fork legs from the top crown if you want to remove the bracket for any reason. Let's say you're going to a race day and you wanted to take the headlight off, something like that. So that's looking really, really smart. And yeah, the bike is kind of taken on a new look today. We've got quite a bit done, and I'm very much pleased. So thank you guys for watching this episode, and thank you all for watching my last video as well, the short film I did. I really, really appreciate that, and I hope you all had a good Christmas, and wishing you an even better New Year. I will see you next time.